So a question I've gotten repeatedly on the channel is, Tim, I really want to know your secret. How is it that you're able to go on so many backpacking trips every year? I know you have a young family. You're also balancing your career. I want to be able to do that. How do you do it? And so I thought I'd take the time in this video to talk about how I process, or how I'm able to get to do so many backpacking trips in a year. If you go back and look at the history of the channel, or look at the homepage of my channel, you'll see pretty quickly I have backpacking trips often organized in playlists by year. And so I think I've gone on one so far this year, but I typically will average about 6 or 7 at least overnight or longer trips every year. The number one key for me is planning early and getting things on the family, social, and work calendar. And so at this point, this is February 2019, and I practically have a rough outline set for what my trips will be for the year. Now, there's always some flex whether or not I go on a trip a certain week, but I tend to aim for one backpacking trip a month. My typical sweet spot is, and it should be your sweet spot too, is a 3-day, 2-night backpacking trip, because that's an easy, quick 2 nights. You can kind of make it a 3-day weekend, and that way you don't have to take a whole lot of time off of work. And that's one thing I really look to. But going back to earlier, talking about carving out that time. And for me, early planning and carving out that time is probably the single most important thing that you can do. If you have even a rough guideline of weekends that you have blocked out, try to make sure that you don't have any other obligations. Then you book that weekend, or you kind of pencil it in pretty quickly. And the faster I'm able to do that, the more understanding people are that, hey, I've had this scheduled for 6 months. And so that's one of the big keys. I look for 3-day, 2-nighters that are actually not around a holiday weekend. And there's a reason for that. First of all, the trailheads are super crowded, and everyone wants to get out on those specific 3-day weekends. I actually look for 3-day weekends either before or after a holiday weekend. And the reason for doing that is actually pretty ingenious, if you ask me. It's because people usually aren't asking off for the weekend before or the weekend after. They usually want to extend that holiday weekend even longer. So a lot of times those weekends before or after are looked upon pretty favorably by the people I go hiking with. Their bosses don't mind it as much as if you're extending a holiday weekend. Those of you guys who follow the channel know that I also work in a school. And so that's super helpful in terms of the calendar, that I have most of my summers off. And so I'm able to build some trips into the summer that doesn't affect my job. And so I'll try to at least go on 2 or 3 of those trips during the summertime, because I know I don't have to ask off of work. Thankfully, I have a fairly very understanding wife who understands that I really enjoy this and values that I'm able to kind of get some time away. Something else to keep in mind is you actually, going back to balancing family and backpacking trips, is you actually don't see family trips. And so there are a lot of times in between these backpacking trips where I will go on a family trip, usually an overnighter, where I'm testing out gear, but also I'm out with my kids. And there are actually some private videos that I have on my channel that I just share with family, because I just want them to see the kids out camping. And I do that partly because I want to make sure they get into camping and enjoying the outdoor life, but also because selfishly, if I do that, it means that I don't feel as guilty taking some specific time by myself to have a backpacking trip. Because my kids will ask me every single trip if they can come with me. And sometimes they're just not physically able to do the miles that I'm planning, like in the Smokies where you're supposed to stay at specific campsites, or because I just want some time by myself in the woods or on the trail. So I try to make sure I maintain that balance between carving out time for myself, but I do go on trips with a family that you don't see in the channel. Typically then I do not necessarily backpacking, but hiking, base camping. So I guess you could say I do some backpacking with family in Ohio. And finally, one big reason I'm able to go on so many trips is because of YouTube. It's one of those things where I never would have thought it would have gotten to this point where YouTube is a big driver behind not only encouraging me to go on more trips, I also enjoy seeing the trips. Maybe this sounds really narcissistic, but this is kind of like my video album of memories. And I enjoy going back and looking at previous years' trips, remembering how fun that specific area was. And at times I think about revisiting certain areas. If nothing comes up, I can always go back to, for example, Red River Gorge or a different area of the Smokies. And I like reliving those moments or those years. Super Josh and I were actually just talking about the year when we did Picture Rocks in Michigan, and I was able to do 4-pass loop. It was probably one of my favorite years backpacking so far. I also am laser focused on backpacking, hiking, and backpacking trips specifically. I don't have any other huge hobbies. I've talked about different hobbies before, but backpacking by far is the biggest, most intense one that takes my time. So I don't spend time or money on any other expensive hobbies. And by having such a laser focus on only one hobby, I'm able to carve out time for it. It's an emphasis for me. So how many trips do you usually go on in a year? Backpacking trips of more than one night. 6 to 7, a pretty good average. I don't know, but it's something where I enjoy making a time for it. So how many backpacking trips do you do in a year? And how are you able to carve out time for those trips? I'm really curious to know. Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.